Welcome to Film Trace. This is a podcast where we trace the life of a film from conception to production, all the way to release and reception. We have a special guest. Molly, our good friend, is back. Molly, what episodes were you on before? You did the Aaron Sorkin terrible Chicago movie. What was that called? Chicago 10?
Chicago 10. Trial of Chicago 7.
Yeah.
Okay. Then what was the other one?
It was
Memento? You did Memento.
No, I this is actually my fourth. I just realized that because I also didn't I also do that Netflix movie with Robert Pattinson and
Devil of Time. Devil of Time.
Did I do that? Was I
you did. It was season 2 premiere. You were our first guest on the show.
I was 2 for 1 in one season. That's weird.
Yeah. We have brought you back.
Just happy to be back. Really happy to share this space with everybody.
And I feel like this movie was this movie your idea?
I think it was.
I feel like you were the seed of this idea.
I think I suggested it because what better? You only do anniversary movies, and so what better? I don't know, film bro movie to do, but also like quintessential movie that you would podcast about, but. Also, I distinctly remember you telling me no the first time. I don't know why.
You're right. You did. I did say no.
What was your reason?
My reason was that it's too film bro-y.
Right. Okay. Obviously we pushed past that.
Yeah. I don't know. It just didn't feel. It almost felt like too much.
Right.
But technically, this is not my pick. This is not my pick. It was Chris's pick.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yes. So I co-signed it. Well. I mean, I felt like it was a perfect piece to look back on because 2001 was the year that all three of us graduated from the same high school and then went off to 3 different colleges. And this movie came out in the fall of 2001, like just a month after 9/11, basically. And so for me, it was a pretty important flashpoint in my freshman year of college, and I'm very curious to talk about it with you two.
Who else is here? Is that voice? Molly's voice on her computer.
That's me talking to myself as well.
Oh, perfect!
Wow,
right. We're already there.
Or maybe I'm talking to Frank.
Dad joke alert.
Keep going. I love it.
So it got me excited when Molly suggested it, and I think we should put it on the record now, before we forget that she has already requested for season 4 or 5 at some point in 2022 to make sure that we revisit David Fincher's The Game for its 25th anniversary.
It's on the record now. It
Iconic.
Has to happen.
I feel like and personally for me. I mean, that's one of my. I feel like I will have almost completed like a modern film bro. Like I don't need trifecta, quadrangle, whatever, square. Why did I say quadrangle? But because I'll have done a Nolan film. Then I'll have done a Richard Kelly film. I've done a Fincher film. Sorkin.
Sorkin
it's gonna be good.
Yeah.
This is my purpose here. Thank you.
Yeah,
absolutely. So let's start there. How did you guys come across Donnie Darko? Did you all see it back in 2001, either in the theaters or on DVD a few months later?
Mal, you go first. How did you find it?
I think I was telling you about this when we, full disclosure, Wiper and I did rewatch this together on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. He told me.
Spoiler alert for no one. So I told him this. So my really good friend, Marsha, who I'm still really good friends with, she lived next door to me my sophomore year. So I feel like this was probably like early in our sophomore year of college. So still maybe, so it would have been 2002 at some point, right? Yeah. And she just she was like cooler than me in the way where she probably had more funds available to just like buy DVDs that she heard were cool, right? And so she bought this DVD, I think not having seen it, but like heard stuff about it. And so we watched it in her room together. And we watched it multiple times. We watched the DVD commentary. So I will say it's similar to why, like Chris, like you were saying, this is, you know, and I just like a safe space to be honest with the community and everyone here. This was definitely for me too, like my important like entryway into like modern or like indie films, I feel like. And also appreciating DVD commentaries and like sort of that film nerd aspect of it, because I feel like this movie is like tailor made for, you know, like wanting to like and sitting through a DVD commentary because you're like, what? Wow, what did I just experience? So that is like, I cannot separate also for me, like appreciation of DVD commentaries and like the movie, and also being into the DVD commentary because we watched the movie with that on together as well. So very weirdly formative for me as well.
Yeah, I think for me, I didn't know anything about this movie because I went to like a pretty, like it was a lame school where people were not into like art film. It was like everybody was in like golf or like football or whatever. Their sorority and fraternity. Donnie Darko was not probably screened in the state of North Carolina when it was first released. I found this, I was randomly watching HBO. It must have been the summer of 2002. And I came across just this movie, and it just started with him. I think I missed the opening of it, but the when he's riding his bike, kind of that one of the first scenes there, and I was transfixed, and I couldn't stop watching it. And I needed to know like everything about it. I think I watched it like 5 or 6 times that summer, and yeah, I mean, I think in a similar way, it was definitely one of the first sort of indie super arty films that I don't know, I became obsessed with immediately, and just wanted to know everything about it, how it was made. I wanted to read everything about Richard Kelly and his background and how he created this story. I wanted to figure out what the whole movie was about. So let's start there. What is this movie about, Chris?
It is well, yeah, that was also a thing. I didn't really know much of anything about the late 80s politically, but it seems to be part of the log line that takes place during the presidential election of 1988, the fall. And you got a teenager named Donnie Darko sleepwalks out of his house one night. He seems to do this regularly, and sees a giant demonic looking rabbit named Frank who tells him the world will end in 28 days. When Donnie returns home, he finds that a jet engine has crashed into his bedroom. What the hell? Is Donnie living in a parallel universe? Is he suffering from mental illness, or will the world really end in late October of 1988? Did you? I mean, I probably learned who Michael Dukakis is because of this movie. Is that
Yes.
weird?
No, that's I'm a hard agree on that.
Oh, really? Oh, come on. The Tank? No, the
Tank. No. But no,
I learned who he was through SNL, but this is a close second, I guess.
But was it on purpose, that this movie comes out at the beginning of Bush 2's term and takes place right before Bush 1 is elected?
Yeah, it's like I guess it's like a bookend to Reaganism, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of what he intended. When he was writing this thing, I think he was like, what, 20, pretty early, like 25, 26, something like that. He wanted to make essentially, I don't even know, like a critical, would you call this social commentary? Because it's there, but it's like not as like, it doesn't have any sort of edge to it, really.
No. Well, go ahead, Chris.
I would say for a movie that has no interest in being subtle, that's like one of the strange subtleties to it.
It is, yeah.
And
it's
what do you think, Molly?
I don't think. I mean, Whitebird, I feel like you can pretty concretely answer since you've read every Richard Kelly interview about this and listened.
It doesn't mean I rember.
No, but like Angie, you watched the director's cut and possibly the commentary for the director's cut, which I have never done. The sense I've always gotten from the stuff I've heard him say is like, I don't think he intended it to be a social commentary. I mean, I think there's like just sort of certain elements in there, but it's like I feel like multiple times he says like for them this is like a sci-fi film. I mean, like other elements stuff, but it's not like it's not first and foremost.
Why set it in 88 then?
I think it's just like a gut he went to USC Film School, right? So he probably he picked up these like little tricks of the trade. I think you're right, Ma. I think essentially it's a sci-fi movie. That's what he wanted to do.
Yeah, and I mean, his age, right? Like he was, I think, like, so he was 24. Like I think it's also, again, it makes sense, right? Like you set something. He has, I'm assuming, some sort of nostalgia for growing up in the 80s himself, right? So like I assume that was, can't remember him explicitly saying that, but I assume that was part of the draw as well. Just if he's writing something that, that's appealing to him because it's familiar.
Well, it's interesting. I just found a quote. He goes, he summarized the script, Richard Kelly, the director and writer, of course, as an amusing and poignant recollection of suburban America in the Reagan era. So poignant doesn't really go together with like social commentary. So it's almost just like
but like he would have been, and like that's when he would have grown up, because when was he? If he was 24, like he was born in like the mid-late 70s. So I mean, that tracks for someone who's
he's probably the age of S. Darko in 1988.
We don't. That's
That
just triggered a lot of people. Why would you do that?
I've never seen it.
I mean, I think it would be interesting because you have tons of notes here about he's only done 3 films.
Yes.
I think we can't like move forward until we talk about his failure, if that makes sense. So like Donnie Darko is his first film. He does Southland Tales. I mean, do we even want to talk about Southland Tales? Like,
no, let's not.
Okay, we're not going to talk about Southland Tales.
Let's talk about The Box, though.
Let's talk about
2009.
The Box, which me and Molly own, by the way. We are owners of The Box.
Also, yes, a late night COVID purchase, the delirium of COVID virtual hangouts, when it's like, I guess we're watching The Box. Shoot, it's only $2 more to buy it. I guess we're buying it, and then we both own The Box in perpetuity now. So
regret it, but don't at the same time.
Sure. Hopefully Richard Kelly got $1 out of it. I don't know.
I saw The Box in the theaters opening weekend, like a 10 p.m. show, and it was my wife and I, the only ones in the theater except for one mysterious man in a trench coat, which is the exact way to see this movie.
Shut up. In an actual trench coat?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. I mean, what adds to like the weird allure of the cult status of this movie is that like Richard Kelly has never done anything since.
Yeah.
And like legitimately nothing. Not
but
like
still does interviews about how he's done nothing. like clockwork, like every 6 months since 2009.
What has he been trying to do?
Right. So that was probably what I was most interested in. We're talking about like tracing the life of a film, especially on its 20th anniversary, and the kind of legacy it's managed to maintain over the years, not just with our generation, but also now I think it's starting to connect with younger generations too, which is super strange, but also like I'm excited about it because I love this movie. And yet Richard Kelly is just in Hollywood purgatory. So I was trying to like trace through the different years. So in 2009, when The Box came out, but it wasn't clear that it was a monumental failure. It's his only mainstream release, right? Warner Brothers production and distribution. And at that point, he had been working on a 3D thriller set in Manhattan in the year 2014. 5 years in the future, and it was supposed to be filmed using full CGI motion capture. So like amazing. Planet of the Apes with just the apes. Who knows what that could have been. Didn't pan out, probably because Warner Brothers said it was fun working with you, Mr. Kelly. We'll see you never. And then in 2011, he had managed to get himself on the map with this script called Corpus Christi, which was a contemporary, once again, thriller suspense film set in the coastal city of Texas, revolving around a mentally unstable Iraq war vet named Patience Del Rosa, who forges a strange friendship with his boss, Ralph Selverson. So just regular, like, I don't know, like suspense drama, almost like Cherry, the movie that came out earlier this year.
Oh, yeah, Cherry.
Right?
Fun one.
But once again, falls through the cracks. Then he starts working very closely with James Gandolfini in 2013 on a true crime movie called Amicus. But then, of course, Gandolfini dies, and so there goes both the project and the money for it. and he reported that to the Hollywood Reporter in 2016. And then finally, he was quiet for a few years after that. But he did just do a really extensive interview earlier this year in February with Slash Film, in which he just kind of pontificates about the world of streaming, especially in a COVID era.
It's the future.
Right, exactly. He predicted Southland Tales is now reality. But he says in this interview that he's got tons of different projects in the mix, which means that I'm just imagining there's like composition notebooks lining his room and none of them make sense. But he seems to be very interested in, like he has kind of always been, especially with Southland Tales, doing something outside the box in terms of like, would it be a film? Would it be a TV show? Would it be somewhere in between? I don't know. When I was reading this interview, it very much gave me the vibes of our conversation from last week, Dan, about the Fear Street trilogy. Yeah. Like something like that seems like, but just like even more batshit would be right up Richard Kelly's, right up his alley. But he says that he's got at least 10 different things in the works, but I fear that he just has no money, no organizational skills. Is that too much shade?
No, I think he needs like a project manager. He needs to hire a project manager for himself. I mean, it's crazy because he says all this, right? He has all these projects working, but Donnie Darko was essentially his first direction, right?
Right. Yeah.
His first script that he wrote after he got out of film school, right? So I think there's like 3 years after he got out of film school, spent 28 days writing it. Right, so it's a callback to the film because it takes place over 28 days. It was filmed in 28 days. Like, so this is like not on a budget of $4.5 million. Who got the budget for him? Drew Barrymore, right? Like, she is instrumental in this film getting made. It just seems to me that like in that moment, as a young person who was unproven, when you just have to go for it and not think about really the consequences or think about failing all that much, he was successful. But the moment he got success, it sort of like crushed him for some reason. Because I guarantee you, if you had Richard Kelly and said, hey, I'm going to give you a month to write a movie and I'm going to give you a month to direct it right now, and I'm going to give you $1 million, he would come out with something freaking awesome. But like, if you give him 6 months to write something and $10 million, it's going to end up like The Box, right? Like he just doesn't, there's something about him where it's almost like he doesn't want to succeed or something. You know what I mean? Like he has that weird fatalistic sort of tragedy figure about himself now, which kind of feeds into the movie. Am I wrong about this? Does it not feed into the movie more that like he's kind of a loser now?
Wow. Okay, I think we're
Richard Kelly,
I think we're past listeners. This episode is definitely going to be bloated and over an hour, but also I think we're doing the most with this Richard Kelly mythology. I mean, yes. I'll offer some other context. I will say, listening both of you guys talk. So one thing is like that I've realized is Hollywood has like perpetual black holes that people can fall into. Like Richard Kelly, I think for us, because he feels like, because he shot out of the gate as like this boy wonder, and this film was so like meaningful or like impactful for us in very specific ways. It feels like we're very hyper aware of sort of like his, seemingly failed trajectory, but like one, he's still fairly young, and two, as I was pointing out to Whitebird, one of my favorite directors, the champion and king of the erotic adult drama, Adrian Lin, has had a 20-year gap after his there's and I mean Terrence Malick, that's probably by his own design, but like there's tons of like really sort of important, impactful directors that like often for different reasons. And I feel like Adrian Lin, I remember looking, I was like, where has he been? And there was just an interview with him, and it was just like, again, also classic, him like having all these projects that started and stopped. Like he had something in 2015 with Nicole Kidman attached, and it just disappeared. Like, so it's Hollywood's brutal, I think is what I'm trying to say. So like some of that's on Richard Kelly. Also, I think, like he's got, I guess, I don't know who would be similar, but he's very clear all the time that he has to have full control over a project, and he has to do the script, the direct, whatever. So I think that's also part of what I imagine hinders his ability to, you know what I mean, kind of get traction on stuff is because he's not going to just do anything, right? He's not going to take on, he like basically in some of those interviews you guys are talking about, he says he's not going to do a pre-existing property. He's only doing original scripts, you know, and probably only original scripts that he also gets to direct. So it's like, so I guess in that sense, I agree where it is a little bit of like the self-fulfilling prophecy and the self-failure, because it's like, he's very like rigid on the sort of types of projects that he'll do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, and it's funny too, like we talk about you know, how hard is it to get a movie made, and like there's a joke about like, oh, he's already successful, he's a white male, it should be sort of, it's still hard to get films made. And if you look at like the start of Donnie Darko and how it became into being, it's like it's almost a stroke of luck on some level. Like it doesn't hurt he went to USC. That's a huge leg up. Like how many people go to that film school?
White man.
Exactly, right? But you look at the path of it, and it's like, this thing shouldn't have gotten made. Like, there's too many coincidences of like, basically you have what is essentially an amazing script. And everybody who read it thought it was an amazing script, but nobody wanted to film it. And to Molly's point, because part of the reason is he wanted to direct it. But it was only because certain people got involved at the right time that this film ever saw the light of day. And there's so many stories to tell about that. The fact that it even got played in theaters is kind of a miracle. So it kind of just goes to show you, even if you go to USC, even if you have all these legs up, it's very hard to get a movie made. It's very hard to get someone to give you millions of dollars to put your vision on the screen. And I love that there's like a quote here, like he says, "God bless Jason Schwartzman," because, the script was going around, and eventually one of the reasons that it got a different level of attention is Jason Schwartzman was attached to play the lead, which would have been, I think, a complete disaster. Am I wrong about saying that? Like Jason Schwartzman?
100%.
Yeah, no doubt in my mind.
And he was actually set to star, and they were ready to go production, but then the schedule changed, and Jason had to drop out. And they also asked, I just read this, I can't verify it. It's on Vulture, so I don't know if I believe it. But Vince Vaughn was offered the lead.
What?
Yes, Vince Vaughn, a 30-year-old Vince Vaughn, was offered the lead of this movie.
That feels fake. Because I also feel like there's quotes from him that say, like, I knew immediately when Jake walked in, it was him. He had this holding clock. So, like, there's a lot of stories floating around about this casting that don't make sense.
There's a lot of myth making, right, by Richard Kelly himself about how this story came to be, how the movie came into production, like the whole written in 28 days, shot in 28 days. I don't believe that. I don't think that's probably true. So it lines up with the movie. I mean, so there's a lot of stuff where it's hard to sort of decipher what actually was the intention here. How about this? Let's say, hypothetically, do we think this script gets made if he didn't go to USC? Film school, that is.
I don't know much about who are his parents.
Someone texts Drax and asks if, like, he would have very specific knowledge about this. He would know. I mean, yes, I think it feels like luck, but it's like so many situations that you describe where it's like there's an inordinate amount of like young white men in their mid-20s who get a lot of the big breaks, that are like, so I think like one, duh. Two, yes, like it's that he had the right people, like you said, pay attention, that like, I mean, having Jason Schwartzman like attached to anything. I mean, Jason Schwartzman's like a Hollywood insider, right? Like he's a Coppola. He's like you know what I mean? Like so it's like something like that. I think just the web of Hollywood, right? I imagine like connects you to this broader, or puts eyes on you, right? And then also, yeah, I do think it was the luck. And he talks about that in like the cast commentary. There's two different DVD commentaries, listeners, and the one with Drew Barrymore and the rest of the cast is, he talks about that a lot. He constantly refers to Drew Barrymore as the fairy godmother and Flower Films as the fairy godmother. So it was like, it was one of the first films that Flower Films, Nancy and Drew's production company, produced. And so I think, like, to all of your points about they got the theatrical release, so it was luck and a fluke in the sense of like, anybody who kind of gets breaks, the right person, in this case, Drew Barrymore, loved it so much that she was like, I'm going to make this happen. You know what I mean? So, and Drew Barrymore, like, she made it happen.
And then it's like, even going to after shooting and all that kind of stuff, they had no distributor. And so like, there's all these stories. And again, is this true? Newmarket Films put out Memento, and that was successful earlier that year. And then someone basically set up a screening so that the Newmarket execs and Christopher Nolan was in the audience to see Donnie Darko, and he was quote unquote instrumental in getting them to pick up the film. Which, maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but it's sort of, one sort of moment of luck, or whatever you want to call it, serendipity after another, to get this thing on the screen. And then eventually what happens to it is it completely dies, right? Like, doesn't do anything whatsoever at the box office. And, it's one of those things where, it had a second life on DVD. That's where we found it, right? Did any of you guys see this in the theater?
Hell no.
No, right?
No, because I also don't know if, like, I feel like this was also like early era, like, but I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like there was sort of like, correct me if I'm wrong though, like an indie film boom, right? Like in the late 90s. Like, so I don't feel like a lot of, like, maybe sort of after this, like I remember seeing smaller films in the theater like later in college or sort of after that, but I feel like there was, like, I don't know, like a film like this wouldn't have been, even like, I lived in Chicago, so, but I don't remember being in the theater. It was definitely, like I said, it was totally like word of mouth. Like my friend probably heard from somebody else, and then, oh, this film is wild, you got to see it, and bought the DVD, and that's how we watched it. I'll also point out, Nancy, went to USC, the co-owner of Flower Films. Just saying. Mm-hmm. I mean, my point, and she's super rich. So like, the point is like, there's just like like all these things, and you're like, oh, it makes sense that it is a fluke, but it's also just like, like somebody, I feel like there's references to like Drew Barrymore got him song rights, because like, there's just these things where it's like the right people, which is he's a classic Hollywood story now that I'm talking about this, in the sense that's what you need. It's the right people with the pre-existing connections to, take a shine to you and champion you. And that's exactly what he got, that's how Donnie Darko got made.
I mean, there was a point in which this movie definitely could have just gone sideways, because they were threatening to make it straight to DVD. They were very close on some of the deadlines for getting the rights to those huge pop songs. And, if that had happened, like, I really think it's quite possible, Drew Barrymore not picking up the phone one last time, and somebody not clearing the rights for, Tears for Fears, and that, you could have just had like a slightly less marketed film out on DVD. The only reason I actually saw it was because I volunteered at my campus radio station, and we got like free random CDs and DVDs all the time, right? And there was just this big box, but like a radio station, especially one that doesn't have like a proper like film review show or anything, which ours didn't, we had no use for those DVDs, so that would just be in this box filled with crap that like any college kid could come by and take whatever they wanted. And I just happened to grab it, and I don't even know what really caught my eye about it. I don't even remember if like I had heard from somebody about it, but just like that sheer kind of happenstance of like, oh, this looks kind of messed up. It's about a guy who sleepwalks and talks to an evil rabbit, and you put it on a DVD player in the dorms with friends, and it just turns out to be like cool as hell, especially to like a group of 18-year-olds, right? So
yeah, it's interesting that the film was a complete financial failure at first.
Yeah.
So it's released a month after September 11th. It prominently featured a plane engine falling out of the sky. So obviously, if you're alive back during 9/11, people weren't going to movies. It was a very strange time. And so this movie was not hardly marketed at all because of that. It was also dumped in 58 theaters, which is not even a real release. It's an extremely limited release. It's not a wide release at all. So it fails at the box office, but I think a lot of people have come to it, how Molly came to it, how you came to it, Chris, how I came to it. It's sort of through word of mouth, through the home video. I think it made like $10 million in DVD sales in the United States alone. But why? I guess the core question is why? Why back then did it connect so well with all three of us? And then kind of the bigger question is, why does it still connect with people? What is it about the film that I don't know, like attracts people so much? What do you guys think?
Well, I think that I think there's a real interesting kind of cross section of references that come up when looking at this movie, especially 20 years later, where it's like you had this group of people that it connected with and they felt like it was either they're either saying this fondly or they're saying it like it's a gimmick, like he's trying to emulate the magic of Spielberg, which is half true. But then there's also people saying right, but then also like Ebert is pointing out, that this movie comes out a couple weeks after Mulholland Drive, and it's definitely got this kind of super, just like strange. I wouldn't call it Lynchian, but he definitely has like, it's offbeat enough, where you get like people just almost admiring it because it's insane. Like it became a huge midnight movie right after the fact. Yeah. It ran for like 2 years or something at some like chic movie theater in New York, right? Yeah. So like there's this, it has this very like, I can't think of anybody else that was doing it at that time, like a teenage Lynch or like a darker Spielberg, like that wasn't happening in this time period, except arguably for AI, which came out that year and was literally by Spielberg by way of Kubrick, which is also one of the best movies of 2001.
Oh boy, we'll pin that for another episode.
Molly, what do you think? What do you think it back then, how it attracted people?
I'm just really thrown off by that AI comment. Regather myself.
Jude Law is a cyborg Gilligo?
Okay, don't throw the Jude Law card at me.
Yeah, it's true.
How dare you? How dare you, sir? Play into everyone's weakness. That's a good question. I think that it was one of the first the first modern films. Like, okay, I'm trying to trace my own origin connecting with films. Gross.
Meta.
Well, no, because it's like you're sort of saying what appealed to me. I think one, it was sort of a rare at that time. I feel like we have different things now, like Stranger Things and like other stuff, that was the first thing that popped in my head. But like a rare thing where it was like somewhat like teens or like kids were in a movie that was, kind of weird, right? Like, and it wasn't, but that felt like, but wasn't, I don't know. Like it was just, I think he really captured a unique combinations of like things and tones. Like it was sci-fi, but it wasn't super sort of more, I say this as like a huge Star Wars fan, like corny or like whatever, right? Or like there wasn't a lot of, like effects in this movie, right? Like, and it seemed kind of creepy, right? But it wasn't scary, like in a traditional way. It wasn't gory. It wasn't, like it had a like, but it also had like a familiarity and like a softness and a warmth to it, right? Like there's moments of like everyone is like, I feel like, and Drew Barrymore pointed this out in one of the commentaries, which is, and I feel like this is very true. It's like, and a really appealing thing about this movie is it's about like dark subject matter, but there's this warmth that permeates it. Like everyone's very like kind of warm to each other. And like, there's some foundational, like, sort of quiet relationships between the family, and there's people trying to care about each other. Like, I feel like rewatching, I was struck such a small, but like really nice scene with the parents talking to his therapist, and sort of just being like, so what should we do? And the mom trying to hold back tears and comfort each other. Just like that sort of smallness of like, and warmness of like parents who are like our kid is struggling and we're trying to figure out what to do. Like, okay, yeah, like if you think we should do that, then let's do it. We're not sure what to do anymore. You know, like these small, like the dinner scene moment, and you know, just like also like Donnie Darko being like an asshole, but like in a, like I think maybe I sort of also his character. There's all those moments with like the fear and love scene in the health class, with the assembly with Patrick Swayze, where he stands up and is just like whatever he says, like go fuck yourself or something.
You're the Antichrist, yeah.
You're the Antichrist. And, you know, all the times where he sort of like kind of embodies this smart ass thing, but like in a way where you're like, fuck yeah, like that shit I wanted to say at different points too. There's this, I think just this sort of, again, like softness and warmness and appeal to that he somehow made happen sort of in this movie that is like really weird and bonkers, but like it's totally, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like the characters are sketched in a way where like you also enjoy watching all the characters, even like the weird ones.
I mean, watching it as a 30-something, parent, I was really struck this time around by specifically how cool the interactions were between the parents and the kids, where like the parents definitely had like their authority roles, but they were still very much like very empathetic with their very dysfunctional children and the dysfunctional family dynamic as a whole. Like with how Mary McDonald, the little things she does to like signal that she thinks that Beth Grant's character is insane, and the dad, like even though he's clearly a staunch Reaganite, he very much still like thinks it's he like cute, like the opening montage where like he blows the leaf blower.
Yes, I comment on that. It's just like it's so innocuous, but also so dad-like and cute. Yes,
right, exactly. Like just so many little moments like that where it's clear like the cast clicked and the script really showed, like you said, that warmth while still having a very genuine like hardness to the kind of angsty teen protagonist. So you don't see, that's a very tricky balance, and you don't see that very often, if ever, really, in movies or TV nowadays. Anyway,
what about you, Wiper?
I think for me personally, especially back then, there weren't a lot of movies out that were like about questioning reality, I guess. And so I know looking, what was that?
The Matrix, but
but like the year before The Matrix, the biggest movie that year, but not in that way. Well, actually, they do kind of link now that I'm thinking about it.
Oh yeah, totally.
No, for sure.
But I think,
but there's a smallness, right? There's a warmth and a smallness and like a weird relatability that for someone like that's like in their late teens. Like the Matrix is, and the Matrix is like a cool sort of chic, like crazy representation of that, some of that stuff. Donnie Darko is just like the smallness of it, I feel like gives it a weird accessibility.
I want to let Wiper finish, but I also want to kind of throw this out there. The thing that I'm thinking of is like Donnie Darko is a mashup of The Matrix and Pump Up the Volume.
Oh my god.
Okay. All right, Wiper, finish.
So I would say like there's probably three elements where it was like, it's the question of reality in a really true sense, like not just saying, oh, what, like what's my life about? It's not like what's all of life about, which is not, everybody does that as a teenager, I think, I would hope. But that sort of existential sort of exploration was a huge point for me. It was like, oh, like I do this in my normal life. This character's doing it. So I'm kind of wondering what's his answer. Then you have the questioning of the society around you, which is sort of, very prominent in this film. You talked about the life fear stuff. There's that Catcher in the Rye, sort of everybody's a phony lens that goes throughout this entire movie. And in fact, when they cast Jake Gyllenhaal for this, when he walked in, Richard Kelly said, "Hey, it's Holden Caulfield, right? The main character of Catcher in the Rye." So there's that element of sort of criticizing adult society that I really was attached to. The music is just like unbelievable.
Absolutely. The music is totally like the music's like it's again, it's analogous to, not in a lot of ways, but still in some ways, Gardens, the sort of weird appeal of Garden State, where it's like there's certain things that both those directors were never able to recapture. Right? But like they did some things where you're like, whoa, there's elements that they combined here to make this like relatable, or like you connect or are drawn to it in a certain way. And I think the main thing in both their cases was like the music selection was just like really fantastic. But also let's talk about how the casting in this was fantastic.
Oh my god, yeah, we got to
like that's also a huge part of the set. This dude, like the fact that he got this cast is like so crazy to me, because like everyone is perfect.
Yeah, I mean his sister, he got his sister cast, Maggie Gyllenhaal, as his actual, sister. Mary McDonnell, who I mean, Molly's going on and on about her when we're watching it. What is it about her you think, Molly?
She's like Hollywood royalty. She's like old school Hollywood vibes, like in the best way. Like her screen presence, right? And her ability to go from like you were just drawn to her when she's on screen, and she has this like the way that she carries herself and sort of like the fun, subtle things she does, but then also how she can switch from sort of being like, not even switch, like she encapsulates and makes a totally real seeming mom who's like, sort of like hardened and like in like a relatable way, but also then she has these real like soft moments too that like totally track for her character. But yeah, she's also just like a babe in like an old Hollywood way, right? Like I don't know, she's just like super iconic to me as an actress in general. So like yeah, and her dynamic with like the dad and the guy who's cast as the dad is just like has really perfect dad vibes, and you totally believe he would be married to Mary McDonnell somehow. And like I mean, like the most iconic casting, I would argue, in the whole film is Beth Grant. To me, she's like to this day the most, I mean, the holistically impactful film, but like the single possibly most impactful one is I'm beginning to doubt your commitment to sparkle motion. Like that is like her performance in this movie is so, it's like hard to explain. Is like I feel like the girls and the gays get it maybe in ways you guys don't, of like somebody who's like an iconic sort of character, and like she's not camp, but she also just like she fully embodies this like character that just toes the line of like feeling unrealistic and like over the top, but she never is. Like she just so on that line where, and it just is like this such a memorable character. Like she just, every scene she's in, she just, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just a truly like super memorable performance.
And then Patrick Swayze.
Oh my
gosh.
How
how did he agree to do this? Because like his character ends up being, a child pornography, person. Like it's like, why would he sign up for that? Like that doesn't seem like something that he would do. Was he doing a lot of like independent film back then? I don't really know his career that well at all.
Well, he did To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. So I feel like that kind of showed that he was game for anything.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that, I mean, he was kind of unfortunately a joke, because he, right in a row, what was like Roadhouse, Ghost, and Point Break, which two of those movies I adore, but very much was seen as kind of just like, and of course Dirty Dancing, the Beefcake that just did cheesy stuff. But I feel like there was at some point in the 90s, what was that? Did any of you guys see Fatherhood? I feel like that was probably my introduction to him as like a 10-year-old.
1993 it came out. Fatherhood.
Yeah. Halle Berry and Patrick Swayze.
No idea what you're talking about.
Oh my god. It was clear that he was a guy that was up for doing pretty much anything, and So while I was definitely also kind of surprised, like who would agree to do, who it would be hard for anybody, I think, to agree to do that role. But he murders it. Like it becomes so clear. It's almost like, I mean, it gave me vibes, of course, of like Tom Cruise's character in Magnolia, right?
Mm-hmm.
The self-help guru stuff he was so much a part of like the late 80s, early 90s. And then it like, transmorphed into the like pickup artist stuff of the late 90s, early 2000s. And the fact that there was this kind of, the Beth Grant character, like you completely believed that she bought into it. But then, especially like now, as once again 30-something teacher, like trying to think like, oh yeah, I can totally see like her somehow just like, because nobody wanted to deal with it, nobody wanted to tell her no, just like administration at this school was, even though it's like, I don't know, some kind of prep school, is just like, okay, Kitty, do whatever you want, show him your weird videos, and yeah, I guess we'll hire him for $300 to go do this assembly, where it's like, it does not seem like something that should be happening, but in this strange world of Middlesex, it's just believable enough that everybody, all the adult, enough of the adults in this town would be eating it up that they would let it happen. And just like they would, let a character like Beth Grant's also like scream about the obscenities and how awful Watership Down and Graham Greene's The Destructors are, Yeah.
I mean, looking at all of it, it's sort of, you look at the music, the script, the cast, it absolutely feels like a lightning in a bottle moment. And like, look, there's a lot of movies that are made for $5 million or less every year. I would probably put it at like 300, maybe 200 to 300 movies every year that get that budget. And then most of them are terrible or duds. And then every once in a while you get something like this. And I think have either of you seen the director's cut of this movie?
I've steered clear.
No.
And Molly, you haven't seen either.
So
I am the only person here who's seen it. And I saw it in the theater. When they released it.
What?
I also did see Richard Southland Tales with Richard Kelly in the audience right next to me.
Which I have still somehow evaded, and now I fear me just saying this out loud means I'm going to be forced to watch that with Whitebird at some point, right? Or did we? No, absolutely.
No, I've tried to.
No, I think we toyed with this idea, rewatching it at some point over the last year and a half, and like you backed out because you're like, I can't do it.
It's too self-destructive. Like I don't even have it in me to like hurt me in that way anymore. But like you look at the director's cut, and I'll be honest, director's cut is a complete mess. And it takes this film and it really it just is a perfect example of how everything has to come together in exactly the right way at exactly the right time with the right people to make a great film that's going to last, decades. And, why do we think that this one still resonates? Well, with us, it's like a subjective thing. It's part of our history. It's part of growing up. It's part of being in our 20s and trying to figure out the world. And this movie sort of in some way helped us. Why do you think that there's been this cult surrounding the film for so long? And why is that perpetuated? Why does it keep going? Why are people going back to this over and over again? Why can't Richard Kelly shake the ghost of this film? In a way, like what is it about it outside of our own subjective experience, right? Because we saw it at a really pivotal time in our lives. But it's way beyond us.
Yeah.
Right. This thing is huge. It really got a second life in the UK around 2003, 2004, when the director's cut came out. It just became this huge thing over there, even more so here in the States. Why do we think that is with younger people, older people? What makes people kind of dip their toe back into this movie over and over again?
Yeah, I didn't know about the UK thing at all until you put it in our notes. That independent article is nuts. There's the quote that you have here, where it says there's two kinds of Darkoists. Jake the rabbits, the people that quote have the film that represents an excuse to sound off on complex scientific theory, and then there are others where it's like just about like the intense isolation, loneliness of teenager years, which is universal, right? Would, obviously transcend across the pond. But I mean, it fits, it checks those very two intense boxes, like the time travel stuff. Like, you think of any other time travel movie that people have argued about over and over again, the Terminator movies and Back to the Future and all that. And it's like, those are just fun movies, but there's like something intensely personal and deeply painful about the character of Donnie Darko, the kind of, the quotables from the film, that it's got that cross section of just like the angsty adolescence and the dark sci-fi stuff. And it like just barely, like it straddles that line. And I don't know about the director's cut, but I read a little bit. I could not handle very much about like the tangent universe.
Oh,
and, like,
dude, yeah.
what actually, happens in the end of this film, whether or not, the timeline that we are privy to in the film is something that actually happens versus just something that, happened in an alternate universe that, makes the characters have deja vu in that montage. Whatever the fuck happens at the end of this movie, it ultimately doesn't matter, but it matters enough to, that, and the internet just like fuels those kinds of people on both ends of the spectrum, the, angsty teenager side and the scientific wormhole side. So that's my answer. What do you think, Molly?
Yeah, I think I'll jump in on the same. I just like to, like, all of my appearances have like the through thread that I'm gonna say, which is like, with these film bros. It's like, I do think no, but I mean, try this on for size. So like, because I've been thinking about this, because it's like, again, to the point of Whitebird sort of talking about, like, how Southland Tales especially is just like off the rocker, and I don't know, different things where I think this also represents an example of the really interesting ideas, but also, because this was something I will say also, I re-listened to part of the cast commentary, and everybody was like, loved Richard Colley. It was kind of crazy, like in this cast commentary, because it was like, there's two commentaries on the DVD. It's one with him and Jake, and then one with him and like Nancy Drew, Beth Grant, Mary McDonald, Osborne Holmes, who was a dad, and Jenna Malone. And like that whole group, like Mary McDonald, who's like, and she's talking, I mean, she's worked with like tons of directors, had a super long career, and she's just the same with Drew Barrymore. And they were both talking about how he just was like a really receptive, open director. And anyways, all this to say of like, and again, kept referring to like Drew Barrymore as this like godmother film, and really helped, kind of set the tone for the movie and sort of give feedback. And like, I feel like it definitely represents something where to Whitebird's point earlier, like something calcified in him, or maybe sort of went off the rocker, as it often does with these like dudes that tend to just like want more and more and be like fixated on like being involved in all aspects, a la Sorkin, where it's like he's at his worst when he's doing everything, right? And he doesn't have people, collaborators to rail him in. Like on West Wing, he had some really good exec producers like John Wells and like Tommy Schlamme, and like they, and they were really instrumental in helping craft the tone of that show, and then you go, or other things he did, like the combination of him and Fincher, amazing, and Social Network, right? Then you get something like freaking Newsroom, and you're like, wow, they really gave you carte blanche, and you're so far along that you're like, yes, I can do it. And he doesn't have, it's like a writer without a good editor, right? It's like somebody who, like, a lot of times people are at their best when they have the right combination of people around them, and they're receptive to, you know what I mean? The most things. And I get the sense that he maybe didn't have that on his other projects. So it's just like the lightning in a bottle element as well. It's like creatively, this was lightning in a bottle. It was the right group of people to create that, actually perhaps a more collaborative element to like create something. And also to the point of like, this is like a cater-made film, like Chris was implying, for like the sci-fi rewatchability elements. Like there's things that pay off when you rewatch it a la Under the Silver Lake, Whitebird. Future classic.
I was going to bring it up.
I know my audience here, but that is a really good example. I mean, Under the Silver Lake is like 3 notches above this in terms of just like the rabbit holeness, but this is like, again, a more subtle version of that. So I think it plays into like the commentary, the DVD commentary being cool, having it on DVD and rewatching it, right? And picking up on these little things, you know, like the little moments in the infomercial that you catch on that like sort of foreshadow the Patrick Swayze stuff, or the rewatch things of just these little elements that you sort of put together where you get to the end and you're like, oh, wait, what happened? Let me rewatch it. And then it's like, oh, wait, now I can sort of see you put the pieces together. So I do think probably for all of us and for just sort of movies that get a cult following, that tends to be somewhat of a common element, that they don't completely spell stuff. It's interesting movie. The things are all clicking, and they don't completely spell stuff out for you in a way that like rewards multiple viewings, right? Because to me, that's an essential element of a cult classic, is that there's some infinite rewatchability about it, right?
Yeah, I think too the element that you guys sort of hinted at before, that I think it makes it have such long legs and a long life in terms of like an important cultural artifact, is it's really easy to watch.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a typical indie art movie that someone would call like intellectual or an art film. It has those elements without a doubt, but ultimately it comes across like a Zemeckis film or a Spielberg film, just kind of demented. And so like there's that sugariness. And I think, Molly, you brought this up and said Stranger Things. I watched this, you know, I was watching it with you Saturday night. I just couldn't get over how indebted Stranger Things is, and that sort of nostalgia, sci-fi, whatever you want to call it, that is immensely popular.
Right? I mean, but
it's indebted to this.
Right. Can we not also see the through line though to like, I mean, I don't think it's a 1-to-1, but the through line of like E.T. and like, I mean, what you described is just sort of like, it's like a demented version of E.T. Like, you know, with like the like family elements, the like alienated kids, the like different, you know, sort of whatever, the hero trajectory. I mean, that's a huge part of the movie too, that I think is also maybe like underlying appealing as I'm thinking about it. Like, obviously all of us subjectively, you know, attracted to this sort of somewhat relatable kind of alienated character but like a really relatable alienated teen that's a hero, right, of the movie, right? Like he's a hero in like a way that's outside of himself. He doesn't just save the girl, he did whatever. He saves the world in a very like, but not in a dramatic way, not in a superhero way. Like you said, he pays attention, he figures stuff out, right? And him being able to see things that other people, that's very appealing to like a tortured teen, like all of the people on this call.
Exactly.
Is that, you know, it's that theme of like, oh shit, I see things other people don't, or I connect, or I feel alienated because I don't connect to society in a certain way, or I see things or I'm interested in other things. And it's like literally Donnie's like, you know, he's seeing things other people aren't, literally, like with Frank and stuff like that. But then he's also like making like intellectual connections, like his conversations with Noah Wiley's character, you know, and these other things. And then he literally is able to save people's lives at the end, you know, by like putting that together in a meaningful way. I think so. I also think that sort of relatable alien teen character who gets to be a hero in a way that's like very small and like appealing. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like it's not saving. It's like literally like he saves his family and friends at the end, right? Like that's what he does. He saves the world, but like we don't see the rest of the world. We just see that he saves the people that he cares about. And like that's kind of cool and rare, I think, is like a narrative for something that's sort of one can connect with in a film like this. But yeah, definitely like the warmth, the rewatchability. Again, the characters are fun to watch, you know, just like kind of seeing what everybody does.
Seth Rogen and the singer from Phantom Planet as the town bullies.
Just showing up.
But again, like
Noah Wiley.
Diabetic
Noah Wiley.
#Schwartzman connections. See, it just all everybody's friends and like connections in this movie. I remember reading somebody too when you were thinking about Patrick Swayze from before, that there was something, I feel like it might have been in that oral history article you linked to, where it said like Nancy forget her last name, but Drew's Flower Films partner was like instrumental in getting like Noah Wyle and Patrick Swayze and stuff like that. Again, because she probably like knew their agents and sent them the scripts and was like, hey, this is, you know, a risky thing that you want to like take on or whatever.
To close this out, do we think that Richard Kelly can ever do this again?
I don't see how, unfortunately. I just think that it almost feels like you said, Molly, I think the comparison to Adrian Lin was spot on, because he's got a movie coming out supposedly next year, first in 20 years.
Yeah, Affleck and oh my gosh, first in line over here. I told Wiper in here, already crashed my dreams. I'm like, and he doesn't get it. So anyways,
so like something like that could happen, but and I will be happy, and once again I'll be first in line. But just like you were saying earlier, Dan, that there's like that exact moment in time where everything, you know, the planets were aligned, and that's when it hit hard, and that's when it worked, and that's when they also managed to get this movie made. And it's too much magic to expect that you'd ever see something like it again.
But Robert Zemeckis did it over and over again, right?
Right, but he's a stable man.
And his types of movies are stable man. Okay, wow.
Richard, we love you. Please come on the show.
Seriously, I was like the two listeners.
Want to do Southland Tales episode, Richard? Come on.
Right, come on. He would never.
It's not like you're doing anything else.
Oh my god.
He's got 10 different projects.
Yeah, come on, Dan. But like, yeah, I think to that point, but I also think to our point of, I don't know, I really go back to, this was really part of the lighting in the ball was the timing thing, but also, like I said, the configuration of the creative collaborators on this that I think influence the end product in a way that, like, you have a one-to-one comparison here. You have the director's cut to show you, like, when you have the right people, right? Or when like the constellation of influences like created the film, which was the theatrical release that we're talking about, right? And then when you let Richard Kelly go all Sorkin, you know what I mean? Like, you get like, you get the director's cut, which is like, he gets too caught up in his own world. And that's also part of why I don't think, like, I think he could, but I also don't think that, like, he'd have to be willing to be open to creative collaboration in a way that he clearly was on this. Again, and he doesn't strike me based on the interviews as somebody who's willing to do that, right? And he's pontificating about streaming and stuff like that, where he's like, so maybe he could produce like a mini series or something like that, like a one-off thing where he had it again. But to me, that would still be predicated on the fact that he had the right collaborators who could do the pacing and give him like good feedback to help him shape the vision and not get lost in the sauce, you know, of his own ideas. Like, I think it could be there, but to me, it's predicated on, like, does his ego and wherever he's at mentally allow him to do there. And it seems like he was definitely there, and listening to the cast talk about him, he was super open to that on Donnie Darko. And then it's like, it just didn't happen again. So I'm not optimistic is what I'm saying.
I'm not either. Even the streaming environment, like, I can't remember what interview it was, but you know, in the streaming environment, someone will give you $5 million, $10 million and say no strings attached, just make something bonkers so we can get a lot of like clicks on it, you know? Like, Netflix would probably do that, maybe like Amazon Prime or whatever, but he won't. He basically says, I don't want to do anything small.
Right.
It's like, well, you're not doing anything, man. Like, you're not, like, there's no TV show, there's no anything going on. It's like, he could easily get work if he wanted it.
Yeah,
and I think he's kind of self-destructive in that way.
Yes, he clearly says in that Slash Film interview we're talking about from earlier this year, it's like, he tells you, that's why I'm just like, I'm not optimistic, because he doesn't seem, whatever mental space he was occupying, and I'm sure part of it was like awe and wonder and newness in a way that might, like, for him, like, actually like opened him up to collaboration, right? And just being like, wow, I'm getting to do this, cool.
Yeah,
I'm really open to things and excited about this, and like, maybe I won't get this chance again. And then he somehow I don't know. Cause like he definitely is saying in that article too, like, I'm just really uninterested in projects and I can't let go. I need to have like full control. And you're like, okay, then there you go. Like he's spelling it out for us. Like, don't hold your breath for me. Like, which is a real bummer town.
Which is sad because this is obviously, it's one of my favorite films. Would you guys, I think we debated this a little bit on Saturday night. One of the best films of the 2000s. The Aughts, the Naughties, whatever you want to call
it. Ew, do not call the Naughties. What?
It's already been called that. Too late. Take
put that back on the hanger. Put it on the rack.
That post. Handle that post. I'll just add some reverb to Naughties.
You've already embarrassed yourself. I don't know, Chris. What do you think?
Yes. I mean, for me, yes. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely my favorite movie of 2001.
Okay. Well, that's not that strong of a statement. I mean, I don't know. That's like
Royal Tenenbaums. Like, because
you brought that real back. I was looking at what's the list?
I would say the Royal Tenenbaums is. Oh wait, no, Donnie Darko is better. Yeah.
I mean, again, it's a part of this is very. So I fully admit we were talking about this on Saturday. Like, I think Piper was like, it's going to be on AMC Classics, right?
No, this is exactly what I said. Is this?
What did you say?
AMC plays The Godfather on loop, like
this is gonna.
And I was like, this is gonna be one of those films just gonna play over and over again.
Yeah, okay. So
whatever it's called in 2035.
Right. I mean, I agree. Like in the sense of, I do think there's like analogous things. Like, will it get a Criterion release? Absolutely. Yeah. Like this is primo. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing for me. Like in terms of, you know, like nerd film canon. Yeah, I think it's hard for me with this movie to like separate, like be like in a weird way. I'm like, I don't know. I want to try to class it in like a broader film context, but I'm like, it's just, which again is, I guess, the testament to something. It feels very personal. Like I clearly have, like we all are talking about, a very subjective personal attachment to this movie for some reason. It's like OK Computer for music. It's your introduction into like, you know what I mean? It's our OK Computer. Yeah, like you know what I mean? Or like a different type of film, because I do think that's part of it, right? Is like all those elements we touched on, but it's accessible and being like, wow, this is a film, but I like really like it and I want to rewatch it. It has an accessibility, like while still being, you know, kind of having these more serious film elements to it. So I don't know. Yes, I think for me, absolutely. Like, is it one of the most like personally important or like influential films for me, just in terms of my interest in film? Like 100%. So yeah. It's
the new Godfather is my statement.
I'm surprised, Chris. I thought you might have a stronger negative reaction rewatching it.
Yeah, we thought you were going to be not so keen on it.
Yeah, that was our prediction. You fooled us.
Sorry.
No, you don't need to apologize. I just was surprised.
No, I mean if I had to nitpick, like the only thing that really rubbed me the wrong way this time around was Jenna Malone's character.
Yep.
Like it's very much like just I mean, and that's what it's meant to be. So you know, the movie's called Donnie Darko, but I mean her character is just so in service of him, and there's nothing there for her, and she tries. And like I didn't remember, like I've seen this movie at least a dozen times, and it wasn't until this most recent watch where I'm like, wait, what the fuck? Her dad stabbed her mom 5 times or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Like
and her mom's missing at the end. No, I mean
right, what the hell?
But also I mean, I do think it's a testament to the fact that y'all wouldn't pay attention to, I mean, I don't mean that like, I mean, but like it's true that y'all are like, wait, now 20 years later I'm finally noticing that there's some ill-serviced like female character in this movie.
Just play the head over heels song again.
You idiots. But yeah, so 1, that absolutely tracks, and 2, that's again so funny that you never noticed that, because I always notice that. It's like the thing about her parents, like, because to me that ramps up the feeling of dread at the like as you, which I feel like is kind of again a good subtle way, but like how things start to fall apart. Like this is happening, this is bad, the party's happening, party's feeling chaotic. She shows up and it's like my mom's I mean, because that's not only like it's her mom she's saying her mom is gone when she shows up at that party, and she's like, I just know it's my stepdad. So like she's getting screwed over again. right? Like something bad is going to happen again, you know, and it's just all like sort of escalates from there. So yeah, that's really funny that you never noticed that.
This girl's having a terrible life. Why save her? Like, I'm sorry.
Wow. But I think, again, Richard Kelly, and if Whitebird had a better memory and can remember the director's cut, if there was an explanation, like, was the implication that in the non-tangent universe, if this stuff would have happened to her? Like, again, I don't really understand. You know? I mean, I think it's clear it's clear she wouldn't have died, but I feel like perhaps there's also the implication that, like, again, that thing at the end where it's like, oh, my stepdad is came kidnap my mom. I don't know what she's implying, but where she's sort of referencing, like, if that, I sort of always interpret as like the bad stuff that starts to happen wouldn't happen.
Correct.
If he like none of the best. So I mean, yes, maybe the reason she moved, but like the subsequent danger that she's in wouldn't have happened.
Butterfly effect.
Yeah, kind of. I guess, right? Because
he saves her and saves, I guess, Frank too.
Well, his mom and his sister, so they don't die in that plane crash.
Yeah, but I don't think that doesn't happen in the primary universe.
But no, that's what I'm saying. No, I'm saying he goes back. That's like I don't know. Right. Maybe I could be wrong, but my interpretation and takeaway was always all the bad things that really ramp up and escalate at the end, including his mom and his sister and his dad dying in that plane crash, like don't happen in the primary universe if he dies.
But you're right. But it's also the same engine that kills him.
Correct. But that's sort of the split is like yes, it doesn't make any sense. But again, thematically and mood wise, I feel like, again, because he had the right collaborators and you get lost in the sauce, like in the director's cut, you get, I don't know, I always got that vibe. Like, I think it worked in the sense of I knew that the thing that needed to be communicated was communicated effectively, which is these things are getting worse and worse and worse. And Donnie's being warned constantly, like, you need to do stuff. You need to expose, you know what I mean? The bad stuff keeps happening, exposing all these terrible things in this timeline. And here's how you save it. Here's how you make this bad stuff, erased. You got to go back in time and be in that room,
But Swayze wouldn't have been outed. He would have committed suicide.
I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I don't know enough about, but I don't think that's important. I mean, maybe. I would argue that's part of why the movie works in the theatrical version is he doesn't over-explain stuff. So you don't need to think and nitpick about that stuff. I mean, some people will like the Mad
World cover, just take care of everything.
That's what the subreddits are for, right? Right? You know what I mean? But like you just take away, which is what I always did, was that bad things are happening and they're escalating. And only Donnie can sort of see that and understand how to change that, right? And so that's how he's the hero at the end. And then going back sort of helps save all these people in different capacities by him sacrificing himself. But again, I also think, the duality that you were talking about, Chris, is there's like that element which just like makes it appealing in a way that's really accessible because they don't make it super esoteric. But there's also the elements that if you want to nitpick that stuff, you can go on a subreddit, right? Yeah. And like be like, oh, well, this, but in theory, like blah, 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 you can do that stuff. So like the movie works on multiple levels.
Yeah, it makes more sense than Primer. I'll tell you that much. Okay. Any final closing thoughts on Donnie Darko? Anything you guys want to say? Say your piece.
I mean, I've been this is probably one of the anniversary revisits of this show where I had just as much fun watching it as I did. And I said something similar with American Werewolf in London, but this one even more so, where it's just like, and it all I think comes down to the 2001. What a year.
Yeah. What a year.
Oh my God.
Besides 9/11, but
jeez Louise. I'll say I just want to acknowledge this moment in time where this is the only episode I've been on where we all really are just simpatico in some ways, not in every detail, but simpatico in our friendship origin story. No, I'm just kidding. Donnie Darko solidified our adult friendship, I guess. I don't know.
We celebrate the entire catalog of Richard Kelly. Is that what brings us all together?
That's not what we're saying.
Oh, gotcha. Next up, Southland Tales. No.
Yes.
Oh, man.
What is next up on Film Trays?
Oh yeah, it's gonna be the Jake Johnson pandemic movie.
What?
Yeah, so he wrote this with what's the guy's name? Trent O'Donnell's the director.
What?
I think they like wrote it together. They got an idea. Everybody was locked up for COVID. It's a small independent movie called Ride the Eagle. And so it's going to get released on VOD July 30th. It should be a nice little small film that we can dive deep into here on Film Trace. Molly, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Can't wait to come back for the game.
Yeah,
you,
season 5,
thank
tease the game coming up.
Thank you for having me.
You're always welcome. This has been Film Trace.